Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 663. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, Allah's apostle sent an army towards the east coast and appointed Abu Ubaidah bin al-Jarrah as their chief, and the army consisted of 300 men including myself. We marched until we reached a place where our food was about to finish. Abu Ubaidah ordered us to collect all the journey food, and it was collected. Our journey food was dates. Abu Ubaidah kept on giving us our daily ration in small amounts from it, till it was exhausted. The share of every one of us used to be 1 date only. I said, "How could 1 date benefit you?" Jabir replied, "We came to know its value when even that too finished." Jabir added, "When we reached the seashore, we saw a huge fish which was like a small mountain. The army ate from it for 18 days. Then Abu Ubaidah ordered that 2 of its ribs be fixed, and they were fixed in the ground. Then he ordered that a she-camel be ridden, and it passed under the 2 ribs, forming an arch, without touching them." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 664. Narrated by Salama, once the journey food diminished and the people were reduced to poverty. They went to the Prophet and asked his permission to slaughter their camels, and he agreed. Umar met them and they told him about it, and he said, "How would you survive after slaughtering your camels?" Then he went to the Prophet and said, "O Allah's apostle, how would they survive after slaughtering their camels?" Allah's apostle ordered Umar, "Call upon the people to bring what has remained of their food." A leather sheet was spread, and the journey food was collected and heaped over it. Allah's apostle stood up and invoked Allah to bless it, and then directed all the people to come with their utensils, and they started taking from it till all of them got what was sufficient for them. Allah's apostle then said, "I testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and I am his apostle." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 665. Narrated by Rafi bin Khadij, we used to offer the Asr prayer with the Prophet and slaughter a camel, the meat of which would be divided in 10 parts. We would eat the cooked meat before sunset. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 666. Narrated by Abu Musa, the Prophet said, "When the people of Ash'ari tribe ran short of food during the holy battles, or the food of their families in Medina ran short, they would collect all their remaining food in 1 sheet and then distribute it among themselves equally by measuring it with a bowl. So, these people are from me, and I am from them." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 667. Narrated by Anas, that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq wrote to him the law of zakat, which was made obligatory by Allah's apostle. He wrote, "Partners possessing joint property, sheep, have to pay its zakat equally." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 668. Narrated by Abiyah bin Rafi bin Raft bin Khadij, my grandfather said, "We were in the company of the Prophet at Dhul Hulayfa. The people felt hungry and captured some camels and sheep, as booty. The Prophet was behind the people. They hurried and slaughtered the animals and put their meat in pots and started cooking it. When the Prophet came, he ordered the pots to be upset, and then he distributed the animals, of the booty, regarding 10 sheep as equal to 1 camel. One of the camels fled and the people ran after it till they were exhausted. At that time there were few horses. A man threw an arrow at the camel, and Allah stopped the camel with it. The Prophet said, 'Some of these animals are like wild animals, so if you lose control over one of these animals, treat it in this way, i.e. shoot it with an arrow.' Before distributing them among the soldiers, my grandfather said, 'We may meet the enemies in the future and have no knives, can we slaughter the animals with reeds?' The Prophet said, 'Use whatever causes blood to flow, and eat the animals if the name of Allah has been mentioned on slaughtering them. Do not slaughter with teeth or fingernails, and I will tell you why. It is because teeth are bones, i.e. cannot cut properly, and fingernails are the tools used by the Ethiopians, whom we should not imitate, for they are infidels.' Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 669. Narrated by Ibn Umar, the Prophet decreed that one should not eat 2 dates together at a time unless he gets the permission from his companions, sharing the meal with him. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 670. Narrated by Jabala, while at Medina we were struck with famine. Ibn Zubair used to provide us with dates as our food. Ibn Umar used to pass by us and say, "Don't eat 2 dates together at a time, as the Prophet has forbidden eating 2 dates together at a time, in a gathering, unless one takes the permission of one's companion brother." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 671. Narrated by Nafi, Ibn Umar said, Allah's Apostle said, "If one manumits his share of a jointly possessed slave, and can afford the price of the other shares according to the adequate price of the slave will be completely manumit, otherwise he will be partially manumit." Ayub, a sub-narrator, is not sure whether the saying, "otherwise he will be partially manumit," was said by Nafi or the Prophet. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 672. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, "Whoever manumits his share of a jointly possessed slave, it is imperative for him to get that slave manumit completely by paying the remaining price, and if he does not have sufficient money to manumit him, then the price of the slave should be estimated justly, and he is to be allowed to work and earn the amount that will manumit him, without overburdening him." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 673. Narrated by An-Nu'man bin Bashir, the Prophet said, "The example of the person abiding by Allah's order and restrictions in comparison to those who violate them is like the example of those persons who drew lots for their seats in a boat. Some of them got seats in the upper part, and the others in the lower. When the latter needed water, they had to go up to bring water, and that troubled the others, so they said, 'Let us make a hole in our share of the ship, and get water, saving those who are above us from troubling them.' So, if the people in the upper part left the others do what they had suggested, all the people of the ship would be destroyed, but if they prevented them, both parties would be safe." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 674. Narrated by Urwa bin Zubair, that he had asked Aisha about the meaning of the statement of Allah, "If you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with the orphan girls, then marry other women of your choice, 2 or 3 or 4. 4.3. She said, "O my nephew, this is about the orphan girl who lives with her guardian and shares his property. Her wealth and beauty may tempt him to marry her without giving her an adequate mahr, bridal money, which might have been given by another suitor. So, such guardians were forbidden to marry such orphan girls unless they treated them justly and gave them the most suitable mahr, otherwise they were ordered to marry any other woman." Aisha further said, "After that verse the people again asked the Prophet about the marriage with orphan girls, so Allah revealed the following verses: They ask your instruction concerning the women. Say, Allah instructs you about them and about what is recited unto you in the book, concerning the orphan girls to whom you give not the prescribed portions and yet whom you desire to marry." 4.127. What is meant by Allah saying, "and about what is recited unto you," is the former verse which goes, "If you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with the orphan girls, then marry other women of your choice." 4.3, Aisha said, Allah saying in the other verse, "Yet whom you desire to marry," 4.127, means the desire of the guardian to marry an orphan girl under his supervision when she has not much property or beauty. In which case he should treat her justly. The guardians were forbidden to marry their orphan girls possessing property and beauty without being just to them, as they generally refrain from marrying them, when they are neither beautiful nor wealthy. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 675. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, the Prophet established the right of shufa, i.e. preemption, in joint properties, but when the land is divided and the ways are demarcated, then there is no preemption. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 676. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, the Prophet said, "The right of preemption is valid in every joint property, but when the land is divided and the way is demarcated, then there is no right of preemption." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 677. Narrated by Sulaiman bin Abu Muslim, I asked Abu Minhal about money exchange from hand to hand. He said, "I and a partner of mine bought something partly in cash and partly on credit. Al-Bara bin Azib passed by us and we asked about it. He replied, I and my partner Zayd bin al-Arqam did the same and then went to the Prophet and asked him about it. He said, take what was from hand to hand and leave what was on credit." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 678. Narrated by Abdullah, Allah's apostle rented the land of Khaybar to the Jews on the condition that they would work on it and cultivate it and take half of its yield. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 679. Narrated by Uqba bin Amir, that Allah's apostle gave him some sheep to distribute among his companions in order to sacrifice them and a kid was left. He told the Prophet about it and the Prophet said to him, sacrifice it on your behalf. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 680. Narrated by Abdullah bin Hisham, that his mother Zainab bint Humayd took him to the Prophet and said, O Allah's apostle, take the pledge of allegiance from him. But he said, he is still too young for the pledge, and passed his hand on his, i.e. Abdullah's, head and invoked for Allah's blessing for him. Zara bin Ma'bad stated that he used to go with his grandfather, Abdullah bin Hisham, to the market to buy foodstuff. Ibn Umar and Ibn Zubair would meet him and say to him, be our partner, as the Prophet invoked Allah to bless you. So, he would be their partner, and very often he would win a camel's load and send it home. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 681. Narrated by Ibn Umar, the Prophet said, whoever manumits his share of a jointly possessed slave, it is imperative on him to manumit the slave completely if he has sufficient money to pay the rest of its price, which is to be estimated justly. He should pay his partners their shares and release him, the freed one. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 682. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, whoever manumits his share of a jointly possessed slave, it is essential for him to manumit the slave completely if he has sufficient money. Otherwise he should look for some work for the slave, to earn what would enable him to emancipate himself, without overburdening him with work. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 683. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, the Prophet, along with his companions, reached Mecca in the morning of the 4th of Dhul Hijjah assuming ihram for Hajj only. So when we arrived at Mecca, the Prophet ordered us to change our intentions of the ihram for Umrah and that we could finish our ihram after performing the Umrah and could go to our wives, for sexual intercourse. The people began talking about that. Jabir said surprisingly, shall we go to Mina while semen is dribbling from our male organs? Jabir moved his hand while saying so. When this news reached the Prophet, he delivered a sermon and said, I have been informed that some peoples were saying so and so, by Allah I fear Allah more than you do, and am more obedient to him than you. If I had known what I know now, I would not have brought the hadi, sacrifice, with me, and had the hadi not been with me, I would have finished the ihram. At that Suraka bin Malik stood up and asked, O Allah's apostle, is this permission for us only or is it forever? The Prophet replied, it is forever. In the meantime Ali bin Abu Talib came from Yemen and was saying labbaik for what the Prophet has intended. According to another man, Ali was saying labbaik for Hajj similar to Allah's apostles. The Prophet told him to keep on the ihram and let him share the hadi with him. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 44, Hadith number 684. Narrated by Abiyah bin Rafat, my grandfather, Rafi bin Khadij said, we were in the valley of Dhul Hulayfa of Tuhama in the company of the Prophet and had some camels and sheep, of the booty. The people hurried, in slaughtering the animals, and put their meat in the pots and started cooking. Allah's apostle came and ordered them to upset the pots, and distributed the booty considering one camel as equal to 10 sheep. One of the camels fled and the people had only a few horses, so they got worried. The camel was chased and, a man slopped the camel by throwing an arrow at it. Allah's apostle said, some of these animals are untamed like wild animals, so if any one of them went out of your control, then you should treat it as you have done now. My grandfather said, O Allah's apostle, we fear that we may meet our enemy tomorrow and we have no knives, could we slaughter the animals with reeds? The Prophet said, yes, or you can use what would make blood flow, slaughter, and you can eat what is slaughtered and the name of Allah is mentioned at the time of slaughtering. But don't use teeth or fingernails, in slaughtering. I will tell you why. As for teeth, they are bones, and fingernails are used by Ethiopians for slaughtering. See Hadith 668. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 45, Hadith number 685. Narrated by Anas, no doubt, the Prophet mortgaged his armor for barley grams. Once I took barley bread with some dissolved fat on it to the Prophet and I heard him saying, the household of Muhammad did not possess except a of food grain, barley, etc., for both the morning and the evening meals although they were 9 houses. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 45, Hadith number 686. Narrated by Aisha, the Prophet bought some foodstuff on credit for a limited period and mortgaged his armor for it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 45, Hadith number 687. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, Allah's apostle said, who would kill Kabi bin al-Ashraf as he has harmed Allah and his apostle? Muhammad bin Maslama, got up and, said, I will kill him. So, Muhammad bin Maslama went to Kabi and said, I want a loan of 1 or 2 wasks of food grains. Kabi said, mortgage your women to me. Muhammad bin Maslama said, how can we mortgage our women, and you are the most handsome among the Arabs? He said, then mortgage your sons to me. Muhammad said, how can we mortgage our sons, as the people will abuse them for being mortgaged for 1 or 2 wasks of food grains? It is shameful for us. But we will mortgage our arms to you. So, Muhammad bin Maslama promised him that he would come to him next time. They, Muhammad bin Maslama and his companions came to him as promised and murdered him. Then they went to the Prophet and told him about it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 45, Hadith number 688. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, one can ride the mortgaged animal because of what one spends on it, and one can drink the milk of a milch animal as long as it is mortgaged. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 45, Hadith number 689. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's apostle said, the mortgaged animal can be used for riding as long as it is fed and the milk of the milch animal can be drunk according to what one spent on it. The one who rides the animal or drinks its milk should provide the expenditures. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 45, Hadith number 690. Narrated by Aisha, Allah's apostle bought some foodstuff from a Jew and mortgaged his armor to him. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 45, Hadith number 691. Narrated by Ibn Abu Malaika, I wrote a letter to Ibn Abbas and he wrote to me that the Prophet had given the verdict that the defendant had to take an oath. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 45, Hadith number 692. Narrated by Abu Wail, Abdullah, bin Mas'udi, said, whoever took a false oath in order to grab somebody's property will meet Allah while Allah will be angry with him. Allah revealed the following verse to confirm that, verily, those who purchase a small gain at the cost of Allah's covenant and their oaths, a painful torment. 3.77 Al-Ashadh bin Qais came to us and asked as to what Abu Abdurrahman, i.e. Ibn Mas'ud, was telling you. We related the story to him. On that he said, he has told the truth. This verse was revealed about me. I had some dispute with another man regarding a well, and we took the case before Allah's apostle. Allah's apostle said to me, produce 2 witnesses, to support your claim, otherwise the defendant has the right to take an oath, to refute your claim. I said, the defendant would not mind to take a false oath. Allah's apostle then said, whoever took a false oath in order to grab someone else's property will meet Allah, Allah will be angry with him. Allah then revealed what confirmed it. Al-Ashadh then recited the following verse, verily, those who purchase a small gain at the cost of Allah's covenant, and their oaths, 2, they shall have a painful torment. 3.77, see Hadith number 546. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 693. Narrated by Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, whoever frees a Muslim slave, Allah will save all the parts of his body from the hell fire as he has freed the body parts of the slave. Said bin Marjanah said that he narrated that hadith to Ali bin al-Husayn, and he freed his slave for whom Abdullah bin Ja'far had offered him 10,000 dirhams or 1,000 dinars. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 694. Narrated by Abu Dhar, I asked the Prophet, what is the best deed? He replied, to believe in Allah and to fight for his cause. I then asked, what is the best kind of manumission, of slaves? He replied, the manumission of the most expensive slave and the most beloved by his master. I said, if I cannot afford to do that. He said, help the weak or do good for a person who cannot work for himself. I said, if I cannot do that. He said, refrain from harming others, for this will be regarded as a charitable deed for your own good. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 695. Narrated by Asma bint Abu Bakr, the Prophet ordered us to free slaves at the time of solar eclipses. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 696. Narrated by Asma bint Abu Bakr, we were ordered to free slaves at the time of lunar eclipses. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 697. Narrated by Ibn Umar, the Prophet said, whoever manumits a slave owned by 2 masters, should manumit him completely, not partially, if he is rich after having its price evaluated. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 698. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar, Allah's apostle said, whoever frees his share of a common slave and he has sufficient money to free him completely, should let its price be estimated by a just man and give his partners the price of their shares and manumit the slave, otherwise, i.e. if he has not sufficient money, he manumits the slave partially. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 699. Narrated by Ibn Umar, Allah's apostle said, whoever manumits his share of a slave, then it is essential for him to get that slave manumit completely as long as he has the money to do so. If he has not sufficient money to pay the price of the other shares, after the price of the slave is evaluated justly, the manumit manumits the slave partially in proportion to his share. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 700. Narrated by Ubaydullah, as above, briefly. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 701. Narrated by Ibn Umar, the Prophet said, he who manumits his share of a slave and has money sufficient to free the remaining portion of that slave's price, justly estimated, then he should manumit him, by giving the rest of his price to the other co-owners. Nafi added, otherwise the slave is partially free. Ayyub is not sure whether the last statement was said by Nafi or it was a part of the hadith. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 702. Narrated by Ibn Umar, that he used to give his verdict regarding the male or female slaves owned by more than one master, one of whom may manumit his share of the slave. Ibn Umar used to say in such a case, the manumit should manumit the slave completely if he has sufficient money to pay the rest of the price of that slave, which is to be justly estimated, and the other shareholders are to take the price of their shares and the slave is freed, released from slavery. Ibn Umar narrated this verdict from the Prophet. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 703. Narrated by Abu Huraira, that the Prophet said, whoever frees his portion of a common slave. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 704. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, whoever frees his portion of a common slave should free the slave completely by paying the rest of his price from his money if he has enough money, otherwise the price of the slave is to be estimated and the slave is to be helped to work without hardship till he pays the rest of his price. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 705. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, Allah has accepted my invocation to forgive what whispers in the hearts of my followers, unless they put it to action or utter it. See Hadith number 657 Volume 8. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 706. Narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab, the Prophet said, the reward of deeds depend on intentions, and every person will get the reward according to what he intends. So, whoever migrated for Allah and His Apostle, then his migration will be for Allah and His Apostle, and whoever migrated for worldly benefits or for marrying a woman, then his migration will be for what he migrated for. See Hadith number 1, Volume 1. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 707. Narrated by Qais, when Abu Huraira accompanied by his slave set out intending to embrace Islam, they lost each other on the way. The slave then came while Abu Huraira was sitting with the Prophet. The Prophet said, O Abu Huraira, your slave has come back. Abu Huraira said, indeed, I would like you to witness that I have manumit him. That happened at the time when Abu Huraira recited the following poetic verse: what a long, tedious, tiresome night. Nevertheless, it has delivered us from the land of kufr, disbelief. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 708. Narrated by Abu Huraira, on my way to the Prophet I was reciting, what a long, tedious, tiresome night. Nevertheless, it has saved us from the land of kufr, disbelief. I had a slave who ran away from me on the way. When I went to the Prophet and gave the pledge of allegiance for embracing Islam, the slave showed up while I was still with the Prophet, who remarked, O Abu Huraira, here is your slave. I said, I manumit him for Allah's sake, and so I freed him. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 709. Narrated by Qais, when Abu Huraira accompanied by his slave came intending to embrace Islam, they lost each other on the way. When the slave showed up, Abu Huraira said to the Prophet, I make you witness that the slave is free for Allah's cause. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 710. Narrated by Aisha, Utbah bin Abi Iwaqtas authorized his brother Sa'd bin Abi Iwaqtas to take the son of the slave girl of Zameh into his custody, telling him that the boy was his own, illegal, son. When Allah's Apostle went to Mecca, at the time of the conquest, Sa'd took the son of the slave girl of Zameh to Allah's Apostle and also brought Abu bin Zameh with him and said, O Allah's Apostle, this is the son of my brother Utbah who authorized me to take him into my custody. Abu bin Zameh said, O Allah's Apostle, he is my brother, the son of Zameh's slave girl, and he was born on his bed. Allah's Apostle looked at the son of the slave girl of Zameh and noticed much resemblance to Utbah. Allah's Apostle said, it is for you, O Abu bin Zameh, as he was born on the bed of your father. Allah's apostle then told Sauda bint Zameh to observe veil in the presence of the boy, as he noticed the boy's resemblance to Utbah, and Sauda was the wife of the Prophet. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 711. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, a man amongst us declared that his slave would be freed after his death. The Prophet called for that slave and sold him. The slave died the same year. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 712. Narrated by Ibn Umar, Allah's apostle forbade the selling or donating the wallah of a freed slave. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 713. Narrated by Aisha, I bought Barera, but her masters put the condition that her wallah would be for them. I told the Prophet about it. He said to me, manumit her, as her wallah will be for the one who pays the price. So, I manumit her. The Prophet called Barera and gave her the option of either staying with her husband or leaving him. She said, even if he gave me so much money, I would not stay with him, and so she preferred her freedom to her husband. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 714. Narrated by Anas, some men of the Ангիր asked for the permission of Allah's apostle and said, allow us to give up the ransom from our nephew Al-Abbas. The Prophet said to them, do not leave, even a dirham, of his ransom. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 715. Narrated by Hisham, my father told me that Hakim bin Hizam manumit 100 slaves in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance and slaughtered 100 camels, and distributed them in charity. When he embraced Islam, he again slaughtered 100 camels and manumit 100 slaves. Hakim said, I asked Allah's apostle, O Allah's apostle, what do you think about some good deeds I used to practice in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance, regarding them as deeds of righteousness? Allah's apostle said, you have embraced Islam along with all those good deeds you did. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 716. Narrated by Marwan and Al-Miswar bin Makrama, when the delegates of the tribe of Hawazin came to the Prophet and they requested him to return their properties and captives. The Prophet stood up and said to them, I have other people with me in this matter, as you see, and the most beloved statement to me is the true one. You may choose either the properties or the prisoners, as I have delayed their distribution. The Prophet had waited for them for more than 10 days since his arrival from Taif. So, when it became evident to them that the Prophet was not going to return them except one of the two, they said, we choose our prisoners. The Prophet got up amongst the people and glorified and praised Allah as he deserved, and said, then after, these brethren of yours have come to us with repentance, and I see it logical to return them the captives. So, whoever amongst you likes to do that as a favor, then he can do it, and whoever of you likes to stick to his share till we recompense him from the very first war booty which Allah will give us, then he can do so, i.e. give up the present captives. The people unanimously said, we do that, return the captives, willingly. The Prophet said, we do not know which of you has agreed to it and which have not, so go back and let your leaders forward us your decision. So, all the people then went back and discussed the matter with their leaders, who returned and informed the Prophet that all the people had willingly given their consent to return the captives. This is what has reached us about the captives of Hawazin. Narrated Anas that Abbas said to the Prophet, I paid for my ransom and Akil's ransom. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 717. Narrated by Ibn On, I wrote a letter to Nafi, and Nafi wrote in reply to my letter that the Prophet had suddenly attacked Bani Mustalik without warning while they were heedless and their cattle were being watered at the places of water. Their fighting men were killed and their women and children were taken as captives. The Prophet got Juwayriya on that day. Nafi said that Ibn Umar had told him the above narration and that Ibn Umar was in that army. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 718. Narrated by Ibn Muhayyiriz, I saw Abu Said and asked him about coitus interruptus. Abu Said said, we went with Allah's apostle, in the Ghazwa of Barli al-Mustalik, and we captured some of the Arabs as captives, and the long separation from our wives was pressing us hard and we wanted to practice coitus interruptus. We asked Allah's apostle, whether it was permissible. He said, it is better for you not to do so. No soul, that which Allah has, destined to exist, up to the day of resurrection, but will definitely come, into existence. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 719. Narrated by Abu Huraira, I have loved the people of the tribe of Bani Tamim ever since I heard 3 things Allah's apostle said about them. I heard him saying, these people, of the tribe of Bani Tamim, would stand firm against Ad-Dajjal. When the sadaqat, gifts of charity, from that tribe came, Allah's apostle said, these are the sadaqat, i.e. charitable gifts, of our folk. Aisha had a slave girl from that tribe, and the Prophet said to Aisha, manumit her as she is a descendant of Ishmael, the Prophet. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 720. Narrated by Abu Musa, Allah's apostle said, he who has a slave girl and educates and treats her nicely and then manumits and marries her, will get a double reward. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 721. Narrated by Al-Marar bin Suwaid, I saw Abu Dhar al-Ghifari wearing a cloak, and his slave, too, was wearing a cloak. We asked him about that, i.e. how both were wearing similar cloaks. He replied, once I abused a man and he complained of me to the Prophet. The Prophet asked me, did you abuse him by slighting his mother? He added, your slaves are your brethren upon whom Allah has given you authority. So, if one has one's brethren under one's control, one should feed them with the like of what one eats and clothe them with the like of what one wears. You should not overburden them with what they cannot bear, and if you do so, help them, in their hard job. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 722. Narrated by Ibn Umar, Allah's apostle said, if a slave is honest and faithful to his master and worships his Lord, Allah, in a perfect manner, he will get a double reward. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 723. Narrated by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, the Prophet said, he who has a slave girl and teaches her good manners and improves her education and then manumits and marries her, will get a double reward, and any slave who observes Allah's right and his master's right will get a double reward. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 724. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's apostle said, a pious slave gets a double reward. Abu Huraira added, by him in whose hands my soul is but for jihad, i.e. holy battles, hajj, and my duty to serve my mother, I would have loved to die as a slave. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 725. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, goodness and comfort are for him who worships his Lord in a perfect manner and serves his master sincerely. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 726. Narrated by Abdullah, the Prophet said, if a slave serves his Sayyid, i.e. master, sincerely and worships his Lord, Allah, perfectly, he will get a double reward. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 727. Narrated by Abu Musa, the Prophet said, the Mamluk, slave, who worships his Lord in a perfect manner, and is dutiful, sincere and obedient to his Sayyid, master, will get a double reward. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 728. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, you should not say, feed your Lord, Rabbaka, help your Lord in performing ablution, or give water to your Lord, but should say, my master, e.g. feed your master instead of Lord etc. Siyadai, or my guardian, Mawla, and one should not say, my slave, Abdi, or my girl slave, Amadi, but should say, my lad, Fatai, my lass, Fatatai, and my boy, Gulamai. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 729. Narrated by Ibn Umar, the Prophet said, if one manumits his share of a common slave, abd, and he has money sufficient to free the remaining portion of the price of the slave, justly estimated, then he should free the slave completely by paying the rest of his price, otherwise the slave is freed partly. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 730. Narrated by Abdullah, Allah's Apostle said, every one of you is a guardian and is responsible for his charges. The ruler who has authority over people, is a guardian and is responsible for them. A man is a guardian of his family and is responsible for them. A woman is a guardian of her husband's house and children and is responsible for them. A slave, Abu, is a guardian of his master's property and is responsible for it, so all of you are guardians and are responsible for your charges. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 731. Narrated by Abu Huraira and Zayd bin Khalid, the Prophet said, if a slave girl, AMA, commits illegal sexual intercourse, scourge her, if she does it again, scourge her again, if she repeats it, scourge her again. The narrator added that on the third or the fourth offense, the Prophet said, sell her even for a hair rope. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 732. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, when your servant brings your meals to you, then if he does not let him sit and share the meals, then he should at least give him a mouthful or 2 mouthfuls of that meal or a meal or 2 meals, as he has prepared it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 733. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar, that he heard Allah's Apostle saying, every one of you is a guardian and is responsible for his charge. The ruler is a guardian and is responsible for his subjects. The man is a guardian in his family and responsible for his charges. A woman is a guardian of her husband's house and responsible for her charges, and the servant is a guardian of his master's property and is responsible for his charge. I definitely heard the above from the Prophet and think that the Prophet also said, a man is a guardian of his father's property and responsible for his charges, so every one of you is a guardian and responsible for his charges. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 734. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, if somebody fights, or beats somebody, then he should avoid the face. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 735. Narrated by Urwa, that Aisha told him that Barara came to seek her help in her writing of emancipation, for a certain sum, and that time she had not paid anything of it. Aisha said to her, go back to your masters, and if they agree that I will pay the amount of your writing of emancipation and get your wallah, I will do so. Barara informed her masters of that, but they refused and said, if she, i.e. Aisha, is seeking Allah's reward, then she can do so, but your wallah will be for us. Aisha mentioned that to Allah's Apostle, who said to her, buy and manumit her, as the wallah is for the liberator. Allah's Apostle then got up and said, what about the people who stipulate conditions which are not present in Allah's laws? Whoever imposes conditions which are not present in Allah's laws, then those conditions will be invalid, even if he imposed these conditions 100 times. Allah's conditions, laws, are the truth and are more solid. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 736. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar, Aisha wanted to buy a slave girl in order to manumit her. The girl's masters stipulated that her wallah would be for them. Allah's Apostle said, to Aisha, what they stipulate should not stop you, for the wallah is for the liberator. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 737. Narrated by Aisha, Barera came to Aisha, and said, I have made a contract of emancipation with my masters for 9 uqiyas, of gold, to be paid in yearly installments. Therefore, I seek your help. Aisha said, if your masters agree, I will pay them the sum at once and free you on condition that your wallah will be for me. Barera went to her masters but they refused that offer. She came back, and said, I presented to them the offer but they refused, unless the wallah was for them. Allah's apostle heard of that and asked me about it, and I told him about it. On that he said, buy and manumit her and stipulate that the wallah should be for you, as wallah is for the liberator. Aisha added, Allah's apostle then got up amongst the people, glorified and praised Allah, and said, then after, what about some people who impose conditions which are not present in Allah's laws? So, any condition which is not present in Allah's laws is invalid even if they were 100 conditions. Allah's ordinance is the truth, and Allah's condition is stronger and more solid. Why do some men from you say, oh so and so? Manumit the slave but the wallah will be for me? Verily, the wallah is for the liberator. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 738. Narrated by Amr bint Abdurrahman, Barera went to Aisha, the mother of the faithful believers, to seek her help in her emancipation. Aisha said to her, if your masters agree, I will pay them your price in a lump sum and manumit you. Barera mentioned that offer to her masters but they refused to sell her unless the wallah was for them. Aisha told Allah's apostle about it. He said, buy and manumit her as the wallah is for the liberator. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 46, Hadith number 739. Narrated by Abdul Wahid bin Ayman, I went to Aisha and said, I was the slave of Utbah bin Abu Lahab. Utbah died and his sons became my masters who sold me to Ibn Abu Amr who manumit me. The sons of Utbah stipulated that my wallah should be for them. Aisha said, Barera came to me and she was given the writing of emancipation by her masters and she asked me to buy and manumit her. I agreed to it, but Barera told me that her masters would not sell her unless her wallah was for them. Aisha said, I am not in need of that. When the Prophet heard that, or he was told about it, he asked Aisha about it. Aisha mentioned what Barera had told her. The Prophet said, buy and manumit her and let them stipulate whatever they like. So, Aisha bought and manumit her and her masters stipulated that her wallah should be for them. The Prophet said, the wallah will be for the liberator even if they stipulated 100 conditions. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 740. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, O Muslim women! None of you should look down upon the gift sent by her she-neighbor even if it were the trotters of the sheep, fleshless part of legs. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 741. Narrated by Urwa, Aisha said to me, O my nephew! We used to see the crescent, and then the crescent and then the crescent. In this way we saw 3 crescents in 2 months, and no fire, for cooking, used to be made in the houses of Allah's apostle. I said, O my aunt! Then what used to sustain you? Aisha said, the 2 black things, dates and water. Our neighbors from Ангիր had some manar and they used to present Allah's apostle some of their milk and he used to make us drink. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 742. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, I shall accept the invitation even if I were invited to a meal of a sheep's trotter, and I shall accept the gift even if it were an arm or a trotter of a sheep. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 743. Narrated by Saul, the Prophet sent for a woman from the emigrants and she had a slave who was a carpenter. The Prophet said to her, order your slave to prepare the wood, pieces, for the pulpit. So, she ordered her slave who went and cut the wood from the tamarisk and prepared the pulpit, for the Prophet. When he finished the pulpit, the woman informed the Prophet that it had been finished. The Prophet asked her to send that pulpit to him, so they brought it. The Prophet lifted it and placed it at the place in which you see now. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 744. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abu Qatada al-Islami, that his father said, "One day I was sitting with some of the Prophet's companions on the way to Mecca. Allah's apostle was ahead of us. All of my companions were in the state of ihram while I was a non-muhrim. They saw an onager while I was busy repairing my shoes, so they did not tell me about it, but they wished I had seen it. By chance I looked up and saw it. So, I turned to the horse, saddled it and rode on it, forgetting to take the spear and the whip. I asked them if they could hand over to me the whip and the spear, but they said, 'No, by Allah, we shall not help you in that in any way.' I became angry and got down from the horse, picked up both the things and rode the horse again. I attacked the onager and slaughtered it, and brought it, after it had been dead. They took it, cooked some of it, and started eating it, but they doubted whether it was allowed for them to eat it or not, as they were in the state of ihram. So, we proceeded and I hid with me one of its 4 legs. When we met Allah's apostle and asked him about the case, he asked, 'Do you have a portion of it with you?' I replied in the affirmative and gave him that fleshy 4-leg which he ate completely while he was in the state of ihram." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 745. Narrated by Anas, once Allah's apostle visited us in this house of ours and asked for something to drink. We milked one of our sheep and mixed it with water from this well of ours and gave it to him. Abu Bakr was sitting on his left side and Umar in front of him and a Bedouin on his right side. When Allah's apostle finished, Umar said to Allah's apostle, "Here is Abu Bakr." But Allah's apostle gave the remaining milk to the Bedouin and said twice, "The person's on the right side. So, start from the right side." Anas added, "It is a sunnah, the Prophet's traditions," and repeated it thrice. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 746. Narrated by Anas, we chased a rabbit at Mar al-Zaran and the people ran after it but were exhausted. I overpowered and caught it, and gave it to Abu Talha, who slaughtered it and sent its hip or 2 thighs to Allah's apostle. The narrator confirms that he sent 2 thighs. The Prophet accepted that. The sub-narrator asked Anas, "Did the Prophet eat from it?" Anas replied, "He ate from it." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 747. Narrated by As-Sab bin Jathama, an onager was presented to Allah's apostle at the place called Al-Abwa or Watan, but Allah's apostle rejected it. When the Prophet noticed the signs of sorrow on the giver's face, he said, "We have not rejected your gift, but we are in the state of ihram." I.e., if we were not in a state of ihram we would have accepted your gift. Fatha al-Bari page 130, Volume 6. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 748. Narrated by Aisha, the people used to look forward for the days of my, Aisha's, turn to send gifts to Allah's apostle in order to please him. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 749. Narrated by Said bin Jubair, Ibn Abbas said, Hufaid, Ibn Abbas's aunt sent some dried yogurt, butter-free, ghee, butter, and a mastigar to the Prophet as a gift. The Prophet ate the dried yogurt and butter but left the mastigar because he disliked it. Ibn Abbas said, the mastigar was eaten at the table of Allah's apostle, and if it had been illegal to eat, it could not have been eaten at the table of Allah's apostle. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 750. Narrated by Abu Huraira, whenever a meal was brought to Allah's apostle, he would ask whether it was a gift or sadaqah, something given in charity. If he was told that it was sadaqah, he would tell his companions to eat it, but if it was a gift, he would hurry to share it with them. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 751. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, some meat was brought to the Prophet and it was said that the meat had been given in charity to Barera. He said, it was sadaqah for Barera but a gift for us. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 752. Narrated by Aisha, I intended to buy Barera but her masters stipulated that her wallah should be for them. When the Prophet was told about it, he said to me, buy and manumit her, as the wallah is for the liberator. Once Barera was given some meat, and the Prophet asked, what is this? I said, it has been given to Barera in charity. He said, it is sadaqah for her but a gift for us. Barera was given the option, to stay with her husband or to part with him. Abdurrahman, a sub-narrator, wondered, was her husband a slave or a free man? Shubi'a, another sub-narrator, said, I asked Abdurrahman whether her husband was a slave or a free man. He replied that he did not know whether he was a slave or a free man. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 753. Narrated by Atiyah, once the Prophet went to Aisha and asked her whether she had something to eat. She said that she had nothing except the mutton which Atiyah had sent to Barera in charity. The Prophet said that it had reached its destination, i.e., it is no longer an object of charity. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 754. Narrated by Aisha, the people used to send gifts to the Prophet on the day of my turn. Salama said, my companions, the wives of the Prophet other than Aisha, gathered and they complained about it. So I informed the Prophet about it on their behalf, but he remained silent. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 755. Narrated by Urwa from Aisha, the wives of Allah's Apostle were in two groups. One group consisted of Aisha, Hafsa, Safiyyah, and Sauda, and the other group consisted of Salama and the other wives of Allah's Apostle. The Muslims knew that Allah's Apostle loved Aisha, so if any of them had a gift and wished to give to Allah's Apostle, he would delay it, till Allah's Apostle had come to Aisha's home and then he would send his gift to Allah's Apostle in her home. The group of Salama discussed the matter together and decided that Salama should request Allah's Apostle to tell the people to send their gifts to him in whatever wife's house he was. Salama told Allah's Apostle of what they had said, but he did not reply. Then they, those wives, asked Salama about it. She said, he did not say anything to me. They asked her to talk to him again. She talked to him again when she met him on her day, but he gave no reply. When they asked her, she replied that he had given no reply. They said to her, talk to him till he gives you a reply. When it was her turn, she talked to him again. He then said to her, do not hurt me regarding Aisha, as the divine inspirations do not come to me on any of the beds except that of Aisha. On that Salama said, I repent to Allah for hurting you. Then the group of Salama called Fatima, the daughter of Allah's Apostle, and sent her to Allah's Apostle to say to him, your wives request to treat them and the daughter of Abu Bakr on equal terms. Then Fatima conveyed the message to him. The Prophet said, O my daughter, don't you love whom I love? She replied in the affirmative and returned and told them of the situation. They requested her to go to him again but she refused. They then sent Zainab bint Yashir who went to him and used harsh words saying, your wives request you to treat them and the daughter of Ibn Abu Quhafa on equal terms. On that she raised her voice and abused Aisha to her face so much so that Allah's Apostle looked at Aisha to see whether she would retort. Aisha started replying to Zainab till she silenced her. The Prophet then looked at Aisha and said, she is really the daughter of Abu Bakr. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 756. Narrated by Isra bin Thabit al-Ansari, when I went to Thumama bin Abdullah, he gave me some perfume and said that Anas would not reject the gifts of perfume. Anas said, the Prophet used not to reject the gifts of perfume. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 757. Narrated by Al-Miswar bin Makrama and Marwan, when the delegates of the tribe of Hawazin came to the Prophet, he stood up amongst the people, glorified and praised Allah as he deserved, and said, "Then after, your brethren have come to you with repentance, and I see it logical to return to them their captives, so whoever amongst you likes to do that as a favor, then he can do it, and whoever of you like to stick to his share till we give him his right from the very first fai, war booty, 1, which Allah will bestow on us, then, he can do so. The people replied, "We do that, to return the captives, willingly as a favor for your sake." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 758. Narrated by Aisha, Allah's apostles used to accept gifts and used to give something in return. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 759. Narrated by Nu'man bin Bashir, that his father took him to Allah's apostle and said, "I have given the son of mine a slave." The Prophet asked, "Have you given all your sons the like?" He replied in the negative. The Prophet said, "Take back your gift then." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 760. Narrated by Amir, I heard Nu'man bin Bashir on the pulpit saying, "My father gave me a gift, but Amra bint Rawaha, my mother, said that she would not agree to it unless he made Allah's apostle as a witness to it. So, my father went to Allah's apostle and said, 'I have given a gift to my son from Amra bint Rawaha, but she ordered me to make you as a witness to it, O Allah's apostle.' Allah's apostle asked, 'Have you given, the like of it, to every one of your sons?' He replied in the negative. Allah's apostle said, 'Be afraid of Allah, and be just to your children.' My father then returned and took back his gift." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 761. Narrated by Az-Zuhri, Ubaydullah bin Abdullah told me that Aisha had said, when the Prophet became sick and his condition became serious, he requested his wives to allow him to be treated in my house, and they allowed him. He came out leaning on 2 men while his feet were dragging on the ground. He was walking between Al-Abbas and another man. Ubaydullah said, "When I informed Ibn Abbas of what Aisha had said, he asked me whether I knew who was the second man whom Aisha had not named. I replied in the negative. He said, he was Ali bin Abi Talib." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 762. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, the Prophet said, "One who takes back his gift, which he has already given, is like a dog that swallows its vomit." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 763. Narrated by Asma, once I said, "O Allah's apostle, I have no property except what has been given to me by Az-Zubair, i.e. her husband. May I give in charity?" The Prophet said, "Give in charity and do not withhold it, otherwise Allah will withhold it back from you." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 764. Narrated by Asma, Allah's apostle said, "Give, in charity, and do not give reluctantly lest Allah should give you in a limited amount, and do not withhold your money lest Allah should withhold it from you." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 765. Narrated by Kurib, the freed slave of Ibn Abbas, that Ma'imunah bint al-Harith told him that she manumit the slave girl without taking the permission of the Prophet. On the day when it was her turn to be with the Prophet, she said, "Do you know, O Allah's apostle, that I have manumit my slave girl?" He said, "Have you really?" She replied in the affirmative. He said, "You would have got more reward if you had given her, i.e. the slave girl, to one of your maternal uncles." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 766. Narrated by Aisha, whenever Allah's apostle wanted to go on a journey, he would draw lots as to which of his wives would accompany him. he would take her whose name came out. He used to fix for each of them a day and a night. But Sauda bint Zameh gave up her turn, day and night to Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, in order to seek the pleasure of Allah's Apostle, by that action. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 767. Narrated by Aisha, I said, O Allah's Apostle, I have two neighbors, which of them should I give a gift to? The Prophet said, give, to the one whose door is nearer to you. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 768. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abbas, that he heard as Sab bin Jathama al-Laythi, who was one of the companions of the Prophet, saying that he gave the meat of an onager to Allah's Apostle while he was at a place called Al-Abwa or Watan, and was in a state of ihram. The Prophet did not accept it. When the Prophet saw the signs of sorrow on as Sab's face because of not accepting his present, he said to him, we are not returning your present, but we are in the state of ihram. See Hadith number 747. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 769. Narrated by Abu Humayd al-Sa'idi, the Prophet appointed a man from the tribe of Al-Aist, called Ibn Utbayyah, for collecting the zakat. When he returned he said, this, i.e. the zakat, is for you, and this has been given to me as a present. The Prophet said, why hadn't he stayed in his father's or mother's house to see whether he would be given presents or not? By him in whose hands my life is, whoever takes something from the resources of the zakat, unlawfully, will be carrying it on his neck on the day of resurrection. If it be a camel, it will be grunting; if a cow, it will be mooing; and if a sheep, it will be bleating. The Prophet then raised his hands till we saw the whiteness of his armpits, and he said thrice, O Allah! Haven't I conveyed your message to them? Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 770. Narrated by Jabir, the Prophet said to me, I will give you so much. The Prophet pointed thrice with his hands, when funds of Bahrain will come to me. But the Prophet died before the money reached him. When it came, Abu Bakr ordered an announcer to announce that whoever had a money claim on the Prophet or was promised to be given something, should come to Abu Bakr. I went to Abu Bakr and told him that the Prophet had promised to give me so much. On that Abu Bakr gave me 3 handfuls of money. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 771. Narrated by Al-Miswar bin Makrama, Allah's Apostle distributed some cloaks but did not give anything thereof to Makrama. Makrama said to me, O son, accompany me to Allah's Apostle. When I went with him, he said, call him to me. I called him, i.e. the Prophet, for my father. He came out wearing one of those cloaks and said, we kept this cloak for you, Makrama. Makrama looked at the cloak and said, Makrama is pleased, or the Prophet said, is Makrama pleased? Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 772. Narrated by Abu Hurairah, a man came to Allah's Apostle and said, I am ruined. The Prophet asked, what do you mean? He said, I had a sexual intercourse with my wife during Ramadan, while fasting. The Prophet asked him, can you manumit a slave? He replied in the negative. He then asked him, can you fast for 2 successive months continuously? He replied in the negative. The Prophet then asked him, can you feed 60 poor persons? He replied in the negative. In the meantime an Ansari came with a basket full of dates. The Prophet said to the man, take it and give it in charity, as an expiation of your sin. The man said, should I give it to some people who are poorer than we, O Allah's Apostle? By him who has sent you with the truth, there is no family between Medina's 2 mountains poorer than we. Allah's Apostle told him to take it and provide his family with it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 773. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, my father was martyred on the day of the battle of Uhud, and his creditors demanded the debt back in a harsh manner. So I went to Allah's apostle and informed him of that. He asked them to accept the fruits of my garden and excuse my father, but they refused. So, Allah's apostle did not give them the fruits, nor did he cut them and distribute them among them, but said, I will come to you tomorrow morning. So, he came to us the next morning and walked about in between the date palms and invoked Allah to bless their fruits. I plucked the fruits and gave back all the rights of the creditors in full, and a lot of fruits were left for us. Then I went to Allah's apostle, who was sitting, and informed him about what happened. Allah's apostle told Umar, who was sitting there, to listen to the story. Umar said, Don't we know that you are Allah's apostle? By Allah, you are Allah's apostle. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 774. Narrated by Sal bin Sa'd, a drink, milk mixed with water, was brought to the Prophet, who drank some of it while a boy was sitting on his right and old men on his left. The Prophet said to the boy, If you permit me, I'll give the rest of the drink to these old men first. The boy said, I will not give preference to anyone over me as regards my share from you, O Allah's apostle. The Prophet then put that container in the boy's hand. See Hadith number 541. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 775. Narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah, I sold a camel to the Prophet on one of the journeys. When we reached Medina, he ordered me to go to the mosque and offer 2 rakat. Then he weighed for me the price of the camel in gold, and gave an extra amount over it. A part of it remained with me till it was taken by the army of Sham on the day of Hara. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 776. Narrated by Shul bin Sa'd, a drink, of milk and water, was brought to Allah's apostle while a boy was sitting on his right side and old men were sitting on his left side. He asked the boy, Will you allow me to give it to these people? The boy said, No, by Allah, I will not allow anyone to take my right from you. Then the Prophet put the bowl in the boy's hand. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 777. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's apostle owed a man some debt, and that man demanded it very harshly. The companions of the Prophet wanted to harm him, but the Prophet said to them, Leave him, as the creditor has the right to speak harshly. He then added, Buy a camel of the same age and give it to him. They said, We cannot get except a camel of an older age than that of his. He said, Buy it and give it to him, as the best amongst you is he who pays back his debt in the most handsome way. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 778. Narrated by Marwan bin al-Hakam and al-Miswar bin Makrama, when the delegates of the tribe of Hawazin came to the Prophet, they requested him to return their property and their captives. He said to them, This concerns also other people along with me, as you see, and the best statement to me is the true one, so you may choose one of 2 alternatives, either the captives or the property, and I have not distributed the booty, for I have been waiting for you. When the Prophet had returned from Taif, he waited for them for more than 10 nights. When they came to know that the Prophet would not return except one of the 2, they chose their captives. The Prophet then stood up amongst the Muslims, glorified and praised Allah as he deserved, and then said, Then after, these brothers of yours have come to you with repentance, and I see it proper to return their captives, so whoever amongst you likes to do that as a favor, then he can do it, and whoever of you wants to stick to his share till we pay him from the very first fai, i.e. war booty, which Allah will give us, then he can do so. The people said, We return the captives to them willingly as a favor, O Allah's apostle. The Prophet said, I do not know who of you has given his consent and who has not, so go back and your leaders may present your decision to me. The people went away, and their leaders discussed the matter with them, and then came to the Prophet to tell him that all of them had given their consent, to return the captives, willingly. Azizun, the sub-narrator said, this is what we know about the captives, of Hawazin. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 779. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, that the people sitting with that person will be his co-owners. But this report is not confirmed by an authentic narration. Refer to Hadith 778. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 780. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet took a camel of special age from somebody on credit. Its owner came and demanded it back, harshly. The Prophet said, no doubt, he who has a right, can demand it. Then the Prophet gave him an older camel than his camel and said, the best amongst you is he who repays his debts in the most handsome way. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 781. Narrated by Ibn Umar, that he was in the company of the Prophet on a journey, riding a troublesome camel belonging to Umar. The camel used to go ahead of the Prophet, so Ibn Umar's father would say, O Abdullah, no one should go ahead of the Prophet. The Prophet said to him, sell it to me. Umar said to the Prophet, it is for you. So, he bought it and said, O Abdullah, it is for you, and you can do with it what you like. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 782. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar, Umar bin al-Khattab saw a silken dress, cloak, being sold at the gate of the mosque and said, O Allah's Apostle, would that you buy it and wear it on Fridays and when the delegates come to you. Allah's Apostle said, this is worn by the one who will have no share in the hereafter. Later on some silk dresses were brought and Allah's Apostle sent one of them to Umar. Umar said, how do you give me this to wear while you said what you said about the dress of Udarid? Allah's Apostle said, I have not given it to you to wear. So, Umar gave it to a pagan brother of his in Mecca. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 783. Narrated by Ibn Umar, once the Prophet went to the house of Fatima but did not enter it. Ali came and she told him about that. When all asked the Prophet about it, he said, I saw a multicolored, decorated curtain on her door. I am not interested in worldly things. Ali went to Fatima and told her about it. Fatima said, I am ready to dispense with it in the way he suggests. The Prophet ordered her to send it to such and such needy people. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 784. Narrated by Ali, the Prophet gave me a silken dress as a gift and I wore it. When I saw the signs of anger on his face, I cut it into pieces and distributed it among my wives. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 785. Narrated by Anas, a jubba, i.e. cloak, made of thick silken cloth was presented to the Prophet. The Prophet used to forbid people to wear silk. So, the people were pleased to see it. The Prophet said, by him in whose hands Muhammad's soul is, the handkerchiefs of Sa'd bin Mu'adh in paradise are better than this. Anas added, the present was sent to the Prophet by Yuqaidir, a Christian, from Dhamma. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 786. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, a Jewess brought a poisoned, cooked, sheep for the Prophet who ate from it. She was brought to the Prophet and he was asked, shall we kill her? He said, no. I continued to see the effect of the poison on the palate of the mouth of Allah's Apostle. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 787. Narrated by Abdurrahman bin Abu Bakr, we were 130 persons accompanying the Prophet who asked us whether any one of us had food. There was a man who had about a sa of wheat which was mixed with water then. A very tall pagan came driving sheep. The Prophet asked him, will you sell us, a sheep, or give it as a present? He said, I will sell you a sheep. The Prophet bought a sheep and it was slaughtered. The Prophet ordered that its liver and other abdominal organs be roasted. By Allah, the Prophet gave every person of the 130 a piece of that. He gave all those of them who were present, and kept the shares of those who were absent. The Prophet then put its meat in 2 huge basins and all of them ate to their fill, and even then more food was left in the 2 basins which were carried on the camel, or said something like it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 788. Narrated by Ibn Umar. Umar saw a silken cloak over a man for sale and requested the Prophet to buy it in order to wear it on Fridays and while meeting delegates. The Prophet said, "This is worn by the one who will have no share in the hereafter." Later on, Allah's apostle got some silken cloak similar to that one, and he sent one to Umar. Umar said to the Prophet, "How can I wear it, while you said about it what you said?" The Prophet said, "I have not given it to you to wear, but to sell or to give to someone else." So, Umar sent it to his brother at Mecca before he embraced Islam. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 789. Narrated by Asma bint Abu Bakr, my mother came to me during the lifetime of Allah's Apostle and she was a pagan. I said to Allah's Apostle, seeking his verdict, "My mother has come to me and she desires to receive a reward from me, shall I keep good relations with her?" The Prophet said, "Yes, keep good relation with her." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 790. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, the Prophet said, "He who takes back his present is like him who swallows his vomit." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 791. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, the Prophet said, "The bad example is not for us. He who takes back his present is like a dog that swallows back its vomit." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 792. Narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab, I gave a horse in Allah's cause. The person to whom it was given, did not look after it. I intended to buy it from him, thinking that he would sell it cheap. When I asked the Prophet, he said, "Don't buy it, even if he gives it to you for 1 dirham, as the person who takes back what he has given in charity, is like a dog that swallows back its vomit." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 793. Narrated by Jabir, the Prophet gave the verdict that Umrah is for the one to whom it is presented. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 794. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, "Umrah is permissible." Atta said, "Jabir narrated the same to me from the Prophet." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 795. Narrated by Anas, once the people of Medina were frightened, so the Prophet borrowed a horse from Abu Talha called Al-Mandub, and rode it. When he came back he said, "We have not seen anything to be afraid of," but the horse was very fast, having an energy as inexhaustible as the water of the sea. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 796. Narrated by Ayman, I went to Aisha and she was wearing a coarse dress costing 5 dirhams. Aisha said, "Look up and see my slave girl who refuses to wear it in the house, though during the lifetime of Allah's Apostle I had a similar dress which no woman desiring to appear elegant, before her husband, failed to borrow from me." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 797. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle said, "What a good manaha, the she-camel which has recently given birth and which gives profuse milk, is, and, what a good manaha, the sheep which gives profuse milk, a bowl in the morning and another in the evening, is." Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 798. Narrated by Malik, Manaha is a good deed of charity. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 799. Narrated by Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, Anas bin Malik said, when the emigrants came Medina, they had nothing whereas the Ансар had land and property. The Ансар gave them their land on condition that the emigrants would give them half the yearly yield and work on the land and provide the necessaries for cultivation. His, i.e. Anas's mother, who was also the mother of Abdullah bin Abu Talha, gave some date palms to Allah Apostle, who gave them to his freed slave girl, Ayman, who was also the mother of Usama bin Zayd. When the Prophet finished from the fighting against the people of Khaybar and returned to Medina, the emigrants returned to the Ансar the fruit gifts which the Ансar had given them. The Prophet also returned to Anas's mother the date palms. Allah's Apostle gave Ayman other trees from his garden in lieu of the old gift. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 800. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr, that Allah's Apostle said, there are 40 virtuous deeds and the best of them is the manaha of a she-goat, and anyone who does one of these virtuous deeds hoping for Allah's reward with firm confidence that he will get it, then Allah will make him enter paradise. Because of Hassan, a sub-narrator, said, we tried to count those good deeds below. The manaha, we mentioned replying to the sneezer, removing harmful things from the road, etc., but we failed to count even 15. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 801. Narrated by Jabir, some men had superfluous land and they said that they would give it to others to cultivate on the condition that they would get 1/3 or 1/4 or 1/2 of its yield. The Prophet said, whoever has land should cultivate it himself or give it to his brother or keep it uncultivated. Narrated Abu said, a Bedouin came to the Prophet and asked him about emigration. The Prophet said to him, may Allah be merciful to you. The matter of emigration is difficult. Have you got some camels? He replied in the affirmative. The Prophet asked him, do you pay their zakat? He replied in the affirmative. He asked, do you lend them so that their milk may be utilized by others? The Bedouin said, yes. The Prophet asked, do you milk them on the day off watering them? He replied, yes. The Prophet said, do good deeds beyond the merchants, or the sea, and Allah will never disregard any of your deeds. See Hadith number 260, Volume 5. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 802. Narrated by Taus, that he was told by the most learned one amongst them, i.e. Ibn Abbas, that the Prophet went towards some land which was flourishing with vegetation and asked to whom it belonged. He was told that such and such a person took it on rent. The Prophet said, it would have been better, for the owner, if he had given it to him gratis rather than charging him a fixed rent. Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 803. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle said, the Prophet Abraham migrated with Sarah. The people, of the town where they migrated, gave her Ajar, i.e. Hajar. Sarah returned and said to Abraham, do you know that Allah has humiliated that pagan and he has given a slave girl for my service? Sahih Bukhari Volume 3, Book 47, Hadith number 804. Narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab, once I gave a horse, for riding, in Allah's cause. Later I saw it being sold. I asked Allah's Apostle, whether I could buy it. He said, don't buy it, for you should not get back what you have given in charity.